long ago, uh, I had it out with a feminist who had come into a male safe space from a feminist blog, just to scoff at the idea of male disposability. She went there and basically said that the entire concept was a myth, that men's lived experiences were completely wrong.
What's up, YouTube? Today we're covering why the feminist movement treat men as disposable, and yes, why it's actually real and harmful to both men and women, for that matter. So, let's get into it.
We're just a bunch of whiners who are complaining over nothing. Uh, yeah. Anyhow, that got me thinking about the concept of male disposability and how that interacts with the feminist movement. Male disposability has been around since the dawn of time. And it's based on one very, very straightforward dynamic. When it comes to the well-being of others, they come first, men come last. This is just the way it has always been. Seats in lifeboats, being rescued from burning buildings, who gets to eat. Really, society places men dead last every time, and society expects men to place themselves dead last every time. Humans have always had a dynamic of women and children first, and that has not changed at all. The 93% workplace death gap has to be evidence of this, if only because there's nobody with any kind of importance or power who's interested in changing it at all. In fact, I remember reading an article in a BC paper not long ago that described the increasing proportion of female injuries on the job as a huge problem. And the insane thing was, the change reflected a decrease in male injuries rather than an increase in female ones. Men's injuries on the job had gone down because the economic downturn had put so many men out of work in the resource sector that there just weren't as many trees or pieces of heavy equipment falling on men as there had been before.
Okay, I'm going to have to completely agree with this madam, with what this woman is saying, but I'm also going to have to add a little bit more to it, where I think right now, because the feminist movement is going way too far. Like, for example, we all been seeing these news reports how men are avoiding at work. I mean, men are avoiding women at work. But one thing I don't see many people covering is why exactly are mainstream media now covering this? Well, I can tell you, because I've been through the situation so many times before. I've seen it at a church I was part of. I've seen it at school. I've seen it at other places and other professions where, hey, you have these women or these groups of women who are taught at a young age to just treat men as disposable. You do. You just treat them as disposable. You don't value them. You don't really bother off showing any real gratitude. You just use them to blame all your problems on. But when the men basically decide to leave, when they're not willing to approach these women anymore, or they're avoiding the women at work, that's when you start seeing where those groups of women basically just flat out turn on each other. Like they go fair on each other, they say pulling their hairs out. And from what I've been seeing, the reason why is because without their scapegoat, aka men, well, their unacceptable behavior no longer has a set target anymore. It doesn't. And like there's no focal point for them to basically direct that behavior to. And because of that, that unacceptable behavior just goes everywhere else. Like it's just chaos for chaos. A good example is like I said, in my red pill moment, I know you guys might get a little bit tired of this, but one thing I noticed is that when I left that church I had my red pill moment at, I noticed a lot of people were starting to go crazy where it was just one thing after another. And it's like, okay, having them being left for 5 minutes yet, and these women are already going at war with each other, like they are. They pinned all their problems on me. I said, okay, fine, I'm gone, I'm out. And the moment I left, hasn't even been 5 minutes, and these ladies are already pulling each other's hairs out. And when that situation happens, it becomes pretty clear evidence that the man was never really the problem. It really wasn't.
This was framed as a huge problem for women that required immediate action to solve. Um, it's just crazy. It's like if men aren't dying at work at 20 times the rate women are, we must be doing something wrong as a society. Back when we were still living in caves, that attitude was necessary for human survival. Nature's a really harsh mistress, especially when you think of all the animals that never ever get to die of old age. Uh, Things were a lot different for humans through most of our history on this planet than they are now. Life was dangerous, human settlements were small, isolated from each other, and one big disaster that took out a lot of women pretty much meant the end of the entire shebang for that group of people. So, really, the level of importance that a human settlement placed on the well being of women and children reflected almost always how successful that settlement was. And that can be expanded to encompass entire societies. I keep hearing from the feminist camp that femaleness has always really been undervalued by society and that maleness is preferred. Uh, but I've always contended that it's the exact opposite. The feminine is intrinsically and individually valuable, simply because females are the limiting factor in reproduction of any species. When it comes to producing babies, every woman counts, whereas biologically, one very happy man could probably do the work of hundreds in that regard. So, the level of instinctive importance we humans place on the safety and provision of women and their children, it's one of the main reasons why we've been able to be so successful that we've come to really dominate this planet. And while I will concede that this drive to keep women safe from all harm has often resulted in extreme limits being placed on women's mobility, their agency, their power of decision to direct their own lives, all through history in many cultures, and in many cultures even today. Uh, I think it's telling that those cultures tend to be the most backward. When you consider the restrictions placed on women in places like Afghanistan, and then you consider that if we bombed them into the Stone Age, it would be progress, I think you can conclude that the most successful societies had a really, really good balance between allowing women freedom and the ability to choose and direct their own paths in life, and the need to protect them and provide for them. However, feminists will insist that this these kinds of restrictions being placed on women in those kinds of societies are the ultimate form of objectification. You lock up your possessions to make sure that they will never be lost or stolen or harmed. Uh, Honestly, if I were a guy on a battlefield, I might appreciate being objectified in that way. I think if I was going to be an object, I'd rather be a sexual one or somebody's prized possession than an object that can simply be thrown in the trash or smashed into pieces in the service of somebody else's purpose. Feminists also have a very simplistic idea that our willingness to absolve women of their crimes, slap them on the wrist, spare them punishment, um, it comes from a deep disrespect society has for women's personhood. Not seeing them as full human beings, capable of looking after themselves, that we see them as children who don't know any better. And yeah, well, there are parallels there in our desire to protect both women and children from not only their own poor decisions, but the full consequences of their shitty behavior. It's really not as simple as they try to make it out to be. I mean,
I would agree with Madam that, yeah, it's not as simple as they try to make it out to be. In fact, it's the polar opposite as if they try to make it out to be. Because very often I see so many women here in the West because of the feminist movement, they keep saying that, hey, men need to do more, men need to do more. But when we say, okay, what about you ladies? The reaction is, oh, that's sexist. How? You keep saying men need to do more, but if I place any expectation on you, okay, it's sexist. We also need to consider that, like, hey, when it comes to the draft, women are now being demanded to sign up for a selected draft. And when that happens, women go crazy about it, even though they keep saying they want equality. So, from my understanding, is that feminists, they want equality, but only when it benefits them. They don't want to deal with the responsibilities of it. And when we're told, and when we say, like, hey, you don't get nowhere near the amount of responsibilities as men do, they once again just say, oh, that's because men are treating women as second-class citizens, when really it's not. Because in reality, it's men being treated as second-class citizens, and the reason why is because women here in the West, majority of them, they're being allowed all the benefits of equality, while men are the ones who are taking on all the responsibilities. Which is the exact reason why so many women are getting angry at passport bros, because when passport bros decide, hey, we're not going to date you anymore because of this, we'll just get ourselves a wife from overseas. Okay, we don't take that responsibility you've been placing on our shoulders with us. We leave it with you to deal with. That's what happens.
Today, even today in 2011, we fully expect that if it comes down to a man and a woman in a burning building and you can only save one, the expectation is that you choose the woman every single time. So honestly, whose humanity are we placing above whose here? We're not talking about going to work. We're not talking about getting an education. We're not talking about having the freedom to decide what you want to be in life. And we're not talking about getting to take Taekwondo. We're talking seats in lifeboats here. The person in the lifeboat is going to survive no matter how capable or incapable they are of managing their own life. And the person going down with the ship is going to die no matter how independent, self-sufficient, and awesome he is. That's the equation. One life more valuable than another, and the woman wins every time. So honestly, is there any argument anywhere that women's humanity has always been held in higher regard by society than men's? To be important to society, a woman merely has to be. A man has to do in order for his life to have any meaning to anyone other than himself. I think it was Man Woman Myth who said our society reduces men from human beings to human doings. And I really think that's an apt analogy. We measure a man's worthiness to wear the title of man, and therefore the title of human, through how useful he is, either to society or to women. And one of the most useful things a man can do, even now in the eyes of society, is to put women and children before himself. And while I think there's plenty of argument that this attitude is at least partly innate, the way most survival traits are, even collective ones, if it starts in the chromosomes, we really do everything that we can as a society to reinforce this dynamic. Studies have shown that even though baby boys tend to cry and fuss more than baby girls, parents are quicker to attend to or console a baby girl than they are a baby boy. Even just the level of acceptance of infant male circumcision in our culture, when female genital mutilation was banned pretty much the first afternoon we all heard it existed, it really says a lot about the differing expectations we have for males and females. I mean, speaking as a mother, the last thing I would have ever wanted was to hear my child cry, especially when they're at an age when they're completely helpless, completely at the mercy of outside forces, and utterly dependent on the adults in their lives for every last thing. And yet, even knowing how painful that cut is, we expect baby boys, only days old for fuck's sake, to just suck that up. And just think about what even these very first
I experienced my fair share of this too, even going all the way back in middle school, and into high school, and then to college, and even to this day. Which is, And to be honest with you, I think we take it so far to the point where it harms both of us, men and women. For example, when I was in school, I was in a situation where, hey, I was really the only male student who was actually demonstrating that a man doesn't really need a woman in order to be successful. Like I was not really dating anybody, but I was still thriving. Literally, I was. I was getting ready to go to college and everything. And that created a coalition of women who were just flat out infuriated by this, as well as some female staff members, because we were like saying, no, 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 no. Women are the prize. Single men are supposed to be dangerous. Men need a woman in order to be the best version of themselves. But then I come along and I actually demonstrate with my actions that that's really not true. That caused this coalition of female students and female teachers started reluctantly bombarding me with these crazy accusations of how I supposedly made these women feel uncomfortable somehow. But the issue was, since all the evidence clearly reveals that, hey, Matthew doesn't even realize these women are alive half the time. They can't really give me any form of discipline that could be put on record, like detention or suspension, because if me and my parents decided to say, hey, my son didn't do this, I didn't do this, you have no evidence, and we're going out press charges, it'll be a one-sided court case because the school doesn't have anything that could be held in a court of law. As a result, in order to try to calm down these female students, the only thing that the school could do was just have a sit down conversation with me and one of these female students and try to resolve how I supposedly made this female student feel uncomfortable. And I just listened to it, and it was always a load of BS. It was a completely waste of my time because the complaint was so overly broad and didn't really explain anything. But at the exact same time, I'm supposed to just take on the role of the villain. And I'll be honest with you, this harms women as well because, hey, it really harms your upbringing on the account that we all see that women make up the majority of student loan debt, and that's because you're being taught at a young age that there's no real reason for you to work hard for these more difficult majors when you are valued just for existing. There it is.
These differences in how we nurture our babies, depending on what gender they are, what this teaches them. What do we teach baby girls when we attend to their crying so quickly? We teach them to ask for help because their needs are important. We teach them to let us know when they're afraid or in pain because it's important for us to know when they're sick or in danger or hurt so we can do something about it. We teach them that when they're sad or lonely, to summon comfort, and comfort will be there. We teach them that they're important. Their needs and well-being, both emotional and physical, are important just because. And what are we teaching baby boys when we leave them to cry? We teach them there's not much point in seeking help because it will be grudgingly given, if at all. We teach them that they should become self-contained in their ability to deal with emotions like fear, helplessness, loneliness, sadness, pain, distress. We teach them stoicism. We teach them to suck it up. We teach them that their fear and their pain are things that are best ignored. We teach them that their emotional and physical well-being are just not as important as other things. I mean, given all of that, is it any wonder it's like pulling teeth to get a man to go to the doctor when he's sick? What we're teaching that baby boy is all the things a man needs to know and feel and believe about himself if he's going to stand in front of a cabin with a rifle while his wife and kids hide inside. We're preparing him for the day he has to fix a bayonet to a rifle and charge a hill under enemy fire. and we're preparing him to make a decision to resign himself to an icy fate while women and children escape in the lifeboats. We are really teaching him to internalize his own disposability. And baby girls, by attending to her crying so quickly, by letting her know she's inherently important to us, we're preparing her for the day she has to think of her own safety first, even if it means the man she loves is left standing alone with a rifle in front of a cabin. We're preparing her to take that seat in the lifeboat. We're training her to not allow guilt or empathy or acknowledgement of a man's humanity or any sense that he might just maybe deserve it more to convince her to give her seat to him. Because for millennia, the human species absolutely depended on her feeling 100% entitled to that seat. And that brings me to feminism. You know, the patriarchy smashers, those righteous avengers of equality, dogged dismantlers of every single gender role. What exactly is feminism doing to dismantle this traditional role of the disposable male? Feminism's greatest victories have only reinforced in everyone that society still owes women provision, protection, help, and support just because they're women. In its collective dismissal and abandonment of male victims of domestic violence, it only reinforces in men that it's pointless for them to ask for help because men's needs are of no relevance, and their fear and pain don't mean anything to anyone. Feminism teaches us to put women's needs at the forefront of every single issue, political or social, whether that issue is domestic violence law, sexual assault law, institutional sexism, social safety net, education funding, homeless shelters, government funding for shovel-ready jobs that didn't stay shovel-ready once feminists got wind of them. Everywhere you look, there are feminists pushing their way to the front of the line, demanding women's fair share of all of the goodies, the good stuff.
Madam, I completely agree with you. In fact, I myself had first-hand experience with that multiple times, where feminism don't want equality. They just want men to give more and more and more. But here's the thing, back then when we were still using bayonets, medieval swords, men were giving women everything still. The difference was women were expected to give something in return. They were expected to be submissive. They were expected to cook and clean. But nowadays feminism says, no, we don't want to do that anymore, but we want you to continue giving us all this stuff, but we don't want to do anything for you anymore. We just want to continue treating you as disposable. For example, there used to be this Bible study I was part of where, hey, I invited a female friend into it. I did. She was having a hard time finding a Bible study to join herself. She was. And when my red pill moment happened, guess what? That's when I asked that female friend who I invited to that Bible study for help. And, well, let me backtrack. When my red pill moment happened, that Bible study decided to kick me out. I contacted my female friend who I also invited there. She's only in that Bible study because of me. Like, I'm the reason why she's there. She's fully aware of it. And instead of saying to that Bible study, hey, I'm only here because Matthew invited me here. He's part of the package now. I can't be a part of this Bible study, but he's not part of it too. Because it wouldn't be right. Well, she just said, oh, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Okay, so you don't feel comfortable doing that, but you feel 100% comfortable with an already married man who is deciding to use you on your speak for you on your behalf without your permission to have me kicked out of a Bible study that I invited you to just so he can satisfy women outside of his marriage. Yeah. Like, by all means, make that make sense. Like, by all means. Another thing I noticed is that, like, hey, even if a man does everything right for a woman, even if he does everything she asks for, he does everything right, at the end of the day, because of the feminist movement, the reaction is to still just screwed the man over. It is. Another thing I know is that even in the family household, where we keep constantly putting the women, the female children first, be female. But let me backtrack. Like she said, even in the family household, where in a family dynamic, the daughter's needs will always be coming before the son's needs. Where like the son, and that's creates somewhere the daughter is given special treatments. And anytime the son expresses a problem, like he's told to just shut up and just man up. Well, long term, that creates a very heavy consequence. Because when these siblings grow up, some of them get married and they want to have their own kids to have immediate access to a funny daddy uncle, it's not going to happen. Because that kind of bond, it requires a lot of time in order, that kind of sibling bond requires building at a very early age. But because of the feminist movement, that bonding that should have took place there in that early age just didn't happen. It really just didn't. And therefore, like, hey, if their kids get access to a funny daddy uncle, just not immediate access anymore. So that's what happens. It really creates quite the turmoil. And the other thing I noticed about this whole treat men as disposable is that, hey, when men decide to walk away, and when men decide to walk away, and I had my first experience with this too, it's not even 5 minutes. 5 minutes hasn't even gone by, and these group of women are already pulling each other's hair out. They are. And let's face it, if you're in that situation, whether it be work or anywhere, that's a pretty big piece of evidence that the man was not really the problem. It was these group of women that were the problem. And the reason why that happens is because when the man leaves, there's no focal point for their unacceptable behavior. And so instead, their unacceptable behavior just goes everywhere. Literally does. Anyways, that's all I got time for today. If you like this content, by all means, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a comment, look